Well, hello everyone, and welcome back for another discussion. Today, I think I got a weird one. I think I'm gonna defend conspiracy theories. Not like that. I think that they're right, but I'm gonna defend their existence, and I'm gonna defend that they have a place of existence. And that's right. This is coming from me, somebody who talks about all the time that my highest value is truth. Well, how could conspiracy theory have a place in the life of somebody who is interested in truth? Well, first off, I think conspiracy theories form in the voids, right? Like in the places where we don't have the answers. The more we don't know about a subject, the more mysterious a subject, the more likely it is to have conspiracy theories around it. And it doesn't help when we have like governments or institutions that are actively trying to lie to us or disinform us. Because here's the problem, right? Like if a conspiracy theory forms in the void, then the problem is that very conspiracy theory was created as an act attempting to seek truth. Think about that for a second. For example, when we didn't understand the moon landing, right? The moon landing happened and we started looking at this in the years after this, and people started looking at it going, NASA doesn't have any of this technology. We watched the Challenger blow up in the 80s. We watched all of these other things that NASA had difficulty with. And yet we flawlessly went to the moon like, 7 or 8 times or something like that? Like, I don't know how many it was. We went a bunch of times. And yet we don't have any information about what technology caused that to happen. Nobody's really talking seriously about the risks. It's very, very strange that the only deaths in the entire Apollo program were in a training simulator that started on fire. Now you're telling me that our training simulators aren't even as safe as our rockets that are like fucking strapped with like millions and millions and millions a ton of like explosive like fuel? Like, come on, man. I'm not buying that, because the simulators at the time were literally the same equipment. You like when they were practicing in simulators, it was the equipment they were taking. They were just practicing in it. So it was all the same electronics. It was all the same like switches and all of the things. And all it was there was, stuff to simulate the stuff that was connected to like sensors or other things that you'd be getting feedback as you're moving. But when you're not doing that, yes, you're faking some of that through various other means. But at the end of the day, the actual capsule you're in, it is literally the same thing. The only difference is one decided to get shipped out for to the rocket pad, and the other one got shipped to the training center where you plug it into the dummied up stuff, and so, like the moon landing, for example, was a wild conspiracy theory. Like we've had there are a lot of theories about the moon. There's a lot of wild conspiracy theories about them, and I'm not going to say that I do or don't believe in any one of them. I've been bamboozled. I've had my search for truth, and in the void looking for the truth, I wasn't always strong enough to be able to accept the unsatisfying answer if we don't know. And so I had the flaw, and I think this is a thing we see with conspiracy theories. I had the flaw of using conspiracy theories to I don't know, to make me not admit I didn't know something, or to make me not have to deal with the hard emotions of the unsatisfying nature of not knowing things. Because I think that's a place we all find ourselves in. I think we all like to try to avoid that feeling like we don't know, or that we don't understand, or that something's larger than our comprehension. And that's the way that I use that. Like one of the biggest, like for a long time, when maybe 25 years ago or so, I really didn't believe that the moon landing happened. Now today I do believe the moon landing happened. I do, however, think that there is something extremely unusual about the way they control the information that they give us about the moon. Now, I am not claiming there's aliens on the moon. That is a conspiracy theory. I'm not claiming that we found anything nefarious on the moon. Though I I think the most likely of the conspiracy theories is they found something that they just don't want to talk about. Like, they got there, they found a mineral in the soil sample, and they're just trying to keep that a secret from other foreign countries that have never been able to get moon samples like we have as a nation. And if that's true, well then, okay, we've had a lot of really weird behavior for no real good reason. Because, okay, you could have just said, yeah, we found things on the moon that we're keeping secret from foreign powers. Get over it. Okay, that would have been a fantastic answer, and I think it would have kept a lot of the conspiracy theories from happening. But on the other hand, your information's more secure if you've got your entire population, claiming that the moon landing didn't happen, or the moon's, a hollowed out spacecraft, or aliens are on it, or it's an artificial satellite created tens of millions of years ago so that the planet could be stabilized for life. Like, there's literally so many theories about the moon. And those exist because of the oddity around it. Like, there are some odd properties. The moon, like the way that the moon reverberates with impact, like I guess we've dropped stuff, and because we've got sensors on the moon to understand how, like I don't know, like earth moving sensors, like we'd use on Earth to detect earthquakes. And we put them on there, and by like dropping something from like orbit around the moon, or maybe as they were taking off, maybe they dropped something, they tested, and the reverberation of the moon shows that it has an inconsistent, like it's not a consistent mass, and it may be less dense in the middle than the exterior based on the way that it's reverberating. And that's not even a conspiracy theory. That's just like, that's what the evidence suggests. Now, could the evidence mean other things? Yeah, there's a lot of things about the way materials work. And when we set these sensors up, we don't really have a great, like, we could misinterpret that data too, right? Like, our conclusion could be wrong about that. And if that's the case, well, then this is all a moot point. But if it is reverberating like that, it is odd that it would be so much less dense in the middle, that it would have a dense exterior, that it would, anyway, there's just a lot of oddities with the moon. And when you combine that with how secretive they've been, like about the technology, how they got through the Van Allen radiation belts, this is a big concern for people. This is one of the things that bothered me the most. Like, we have all of our astronauts live long, healthy lives after going to the moon. And NASA says that, oh yeah, we had some kind of reflective shielding on the spacecraft, and that was enough to make it safe to pass through. But yeah, there was definitely still radiation and stuff. And like that's what NASA, that's kind of the official explanation is. They say that they wouldn't be able to shield everything, but they shielded enough to make it safe. But I don't know, man. I'm thinking astronauts would have had cancer years later. I think we'd have had more things like that. Like, I'm not talking about like astronauts to spend time in like the space station. That doesn't cross through the Van Allen belts. I don't know if you don't know what the Van Allen belts are. When solar energy is coming from the sun, a lot of that is highly charged particles. And because our planet is magnetized, those particles actually move as they get closer to the Earth. And they go around, and they actually go around in it. And because of the magnetic and because they're charged, they actually loop around the Earth, and they have these weird waves. And that's why we get the aurora borealis, right? Or the auroras in the southern and northern poles region, because all of the energy of the magnetic energy of the Earth is redirecting those particles to the portion of the atmosphere near there. Now, a lot of the particles actually get deflected and they go around the Earth, and so we've got these bands around the Earth, and it kind of trails off on the backside of the Earth on the other side of the sun, almost like a rocket flare. And now there's an argument that can be made that if you go through that back portion, that it is a lower amount of radiation. Could they have gotten through there? Well, maybe. It's also less stable, I guess. I don't know. This is all, a lot of this is like stuff that I probably got from when I used to like research, like, because I believed some of these conspiracy theories. So I'm not going to say that my research is great or grand, or that I'm some scientist, or that I actually know what I'm talking about, but I think I have a pretty good handle on it. And part of how I talked myself out of believing some of these conspiracy theories is by learning enough to understand that, okay, the conspiracy theories may have some merit in some senses, but not as much as you would really think if you start really learning enough to understand what the various arguments and claims that they make are. And so the Van Allen belts, that was always a really tricky one for me. I didn't see how that would happen. No astronauts got cancer, but at the end of the day, not all of the radiation that comes from the sun is dangerous, and a lot of it wouldn't even penetrate our skin. Like, it might give us a hell of a like a cancerous lesion on our skin, but it may not affect much inside. Now, if your entire skin is cancered out, yeah, you're gonna have a problem. You can have some real problems with that, because there's enough of it that it would do that, but a lot of it isn't the kind that goes through your body. It's a lower energy that kind of breaks up in your skin, I guess. Anyway, I don't know. I don't want to get too technical, because I don't know that I'm right in some of the technicalities. But I am saying that there are reasons to question what we've been told. There are a lot of evidences that we're told something, and then we're told done with secret technology. And then you have like people in like that work for like aerospace companies going, there is no technology that does that. I don't know what they're talking about. They literally would have had to make up some entirely new way of dealing with this than anything that's in public knowledge in the world, because as an experts have come out and said that the kinds of shielding that we have would be insufficient to do this. Now, not all experts agree on that. So then there's a divide in that. Are there some experts that want to just claim it couldn't happen? I don't know. And let's see, that's the other thing, right? There's all these political things. Like, to me, the moon landing, like the fact that we went when we did, it seemed like it was a message to attempt to provoke Russia, right? Like, it was this Cold War era stuff. We're dealing with a space race. We're trying to show off our technology. We're trying to prove that we can do this. We're also hoping that, the instability in Russia is going to cause them to not be able to keep up, and therefore be able to declare that much greater superiority over them. And so there was a great deal of incentive to do something. But the truth is that also means that there's a great deal of incentive to do something stupid, like try to go to the moon without sufficient technology to do so. And I don't know. I think it's equally likely that, that the Cold War was, like, I think that's a big problem. I think that would be a big motivating factor to try to fake something like that. I also think it would be a big motivating factor to actually just try to do it. Even if it meant you're going to blow up some astronauts in the process, even if it meant the rockets aren't going to get there, whatever it takes. The Russians were killing their cosmonauts as they were shooting them up into space. They weren't worried about their safety. They were more concerned about the risks and the advantage. And I'm not sure we didn't do the same and just get lucky. Maybe we just got lucky our astronauts didn't all catch cancer and die on the way in gruesome explosions on the way to the moon every time. Like, so the motivation works two ways, right? Like, and that's the hard thing to see as a conspiracy theorist, right? You want your theory to be right. You want to make sense of it all. And if you start coming with the counter arguments, you start having to deal with the unknowns again, because the counter arguments make your arguments less strong. Your arguments aren't strong enough then to carry you to the point that you're beyond having to admit you don't know something. And so therefore the conspiracy theory no longer has value for you. So if you're both siding it, you're either like you can't be fair as a conspiracy theorist if your motivation anyway was like mine, was the inability to deal with the fear of the unknown. If that's your motivation as a conspiracy theorist, then you're not going to be interested in the other side. And so this is I think this is one of the things that we have in today's society where for one reason or another, when we're in debate, when we're trying to understand each other's point of view, we simply stop caring about facts, because the emotional toll that it would take to admit you're right is more than we can bear. And we see this with political issues too, but I kind of want to stay out of that. That's not what this is about. This is about, conspiracy theories. This is about the way of thinking about what could be. I also enjoy conspiracy theories because a lot of them reside in that space between what we know and what we can prove. Now, if you have a healthy view of that and you can hold on to the fact that, look, this is a theory, it's a possibility, but it seems less likely than this. That may have happened, but this may have also happened. I don't really have a problem with that. That's where I like to engage conspiracy theories at. That's where I enjoy it, is because what incentives would we have to lie about the moon or have actual cover-ups about what's going on with the moon? I mean, it would be fun to think about if it is hollow, like the sensors suggest. If there is a hollowness to the moon, is it really truly possible an artificially constructed thing that was put out there to? I mean, it is like, and that's the other thing, right? Like you can make anything up to fit, to fit a conspiracy theory. You can always find some math to fit something. Like the fact that the moon is big enough to cover the sun at the size that it orbits and the way that like that is fascinating. That it does just seem to be right about the right size. But the moon's also been there for a very long time. We've been having eclipses for a very long time. We've had writing about people talking about eclipses for a very long time. And the further you go back, the older you go, the less and less likely it seems that it's, I don't know, artificial or something. Like it just doesn't make sense. And so I mean, I suppose aliens could have come along, put that up there 100,000 years ago, and we'll never be able to prove one way or another unless we go there, find the hatch, and get into the ship. But I just don't think that day is coming. And so it's interesting, like you get the math of how perfect the moon covers the sun. Like not all eclipses are created equal. Like I guess depending on where the moon's at, like not every eclipse can even be a total eclipse. I guess the moon's moving away from the earth. And if the moon's at its farthest place away from earth in its orbit, when it's eclipsing with the sun, it may actually be that the ring of light is actually getting through. And so that kind of tears that theory down, but it is kind of interesting how you can find all this math, you can show how perfect all of this is, and that does make the mind want to line it all up and make it look artificial because there's a huge number of coincidences that just shouldn't have worked together. Well, that doesn't make a conspiracy theory true, but it does make it interesting. And so I guess I've spent a lot of time using the moon as a conspiracy theory, but there's all kinds of things like JFK. Like that's a completely valid conspiracy theory. If you think the U.S. government had something to do with that, I'm not sure you're wrong. If you think the mob had something to do with that, I'm not sure you're wrong. If you think foreign powers were doing it because of deals he had going on with Russia, I can't argue with that one either. There's a lot of oddities, and why won't they just give us the fucking files? And again, it's that void, right? Like the conspiracy theory is necessary because of the void. If they would have just given us all the information, it would have just been fine. And think about Roswell. Like Roswell's weird, right? Like Roswell, the day it happened, the Army press released, "Oh yeah, we found it. We've recovered a flying disc." That seriously, that the very first day of Roswell, they said that. The next day, oh no, it's just a weather balloon. Our people are idiots, and we don't know how to look at a fucking weather balloon right. Come on. And then they came out with another report years later, and I don't remember what that was, but it was trying to say that, I don't know, I guess there was an early official report trying to say that it was all weather balloons. And then I want to say it was the 90s maybe. There was a whole nother book come out, another study sponsored by the government. And it just more stink on top of stink, right? Like they're telling us now that, well, Roswell, the problem with Roswell is we were really doing things like dumping bodies out of airplanes and crash test dummies out of airplanes and throwing them into the desert and watching for decomposition and watching for what happens when things fall out of the sky and doing all these tests on corpses raining from helicopters. And that's why we said it was a weather balloon, so that we could lie and hide our military operation of desecrating corpses out in the middle of the desert. Is that what's happening? I find it hard to believe you'd come out, say it was a flying disc, and then go, oh, no. We're going to cover this up because something that's not a flying disc needs to be covered up. It's just weird. And so now they're claiming it's these bodies being thrown out of helicopters to test desert decomposing conditions or whatever the fuck they were saying. And that created a whole nother problem. Like, who believes any word that comes out of their mouth now about Roswell? Who believes a fucking word that the government has to say about Roswell? I don't. Do I think it was aliens? I don't know. I don't have good reason to think we're being visited by aliens. I don't know, man. There's a lot of information out there on that, and there's been a lot of hoaxes. Like, see, that's the other thing, right? It's not just the government lying to us. It's the hoaxers lying to us. The hoaxers, they want their 15 minutes, so they make something up. They think they can convince somebody that they got pictures of UFOs or whatever, so they fucking doctor up some pictures, and then they end up there. So we got misinformation on both sides. It's really just, it's really hard living in a society that doesn't value truth anymore. But just because we don't value truth doesn't mean that conspiracy theories aren't a good sign that, like, we want truth. Because conspiracy theories conspiracy theories form in that place of, I don't believe what you're telling me, or you haven't told me enough, so I'm going to create my own narrative, or you haven't told me enough, so I'm going to have to try to figure out what it is you're trying to hide from me. I mean, these are all valid reasons that conspiracy theories get started. So I guess that's what I set out to do, right? Like, I've defended conspiracy theories as a thought experiment, as a thing for people to be curious about, as a place for people to look for answers. But with that, I also caution anybody who wants to do this to realize that evidence is still king. Logic, guessing, all of that leads to no better place than this bullshit that, like, archaeology tells us that the pyramids were burial chambers. They just weren't. They weren't. Come on. There's no evidence of that. That's what you would tell us. That's what you would tell an ancient alien theorist. There's no evidence of that. You know how I know there's no evidence of that? We never found a fucking burial chamber in a pyramid. Not on Giza. Now, okay. There's the other pyramids that I think they were built by the Egyptians to mimic whatever it was that they found when they got there. I think the Sphinx and the pyramids, I think they're older than Egypt, and I think there's reason to believe that. And the biggest reason that I actually believe that is how far out of their way Egypt goes to fight that as an idea. Like, Egypt will fight any idea other than their own. You like, they won't let you, like, you want to go and, like, study the pyramids or whatever, you better not be known as somebody who questions the narrative, because they're not going to let you anywhere near it, because you'll expose the truth if you get your hands on evidence, and they can't allow that to happen. Like, I think that's why they let. Now, this is all speculation on my part. I don't know what the deal is. But I think that's why they did it with, like, I think that's why MrBeast got such a high access thing. He was willing to carry the narrative. He didn't care. He was looking for views, and he's looking for high fives, and he's looking for numbers on his channel. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about truth. He doesn't care about history. He doesn't care about science. And so he was willing to toe whatever line it was that Egypt was going to ask him to go for his video. And that's what he did. And it looked to me like a puff piece. That's my opinion. You think I'm wrong? You have evidence that I'm wrong? Fine. Send it to me. I've got no reason to believe that was on the up and up and anything more than just a publicity stunt for Egypt and MrBeast doing what he does, which is making money on entertainment, which he's not an educator. He's not a scientist. That's not what he does. It's not what he's interested in. And I just think it was a huge monumental disservice to mankind to do that kind of thing with our history. But again, this is exactly the kind of thing that feeds conspiracy theories. That kind of behavior. See, if Egypt was serious about believing what they believed, they would invite dissent. They would show more evidence. They would allow more research and more study. Instead, they want to close everything up. They don't want to allow access. They want to keep people out. They want to preserve it for the ages. Well, okay, fine. Preserve it for another 10,000 years, and another 5 people will ever get to see that again. Why do you need something preserved for 10,000 years if nobody's ever going to see it again? What are you preserving it for? What's the point? Like, and so I'm just against the idea that I am for preserving it. Don't get me wrong. These are incredible treasures from a time that we just have no understanding of. But at the cost of avoiding the scientific inquiry, at the cost of not getting more information, and not at the cost of not having the answers, I think that their hardline stance, that our narrative stands, and you can't really inspect it all, and you can't look for new evidence. I don't know. I disagree with that. I think it's a marketing campaign. I think that there's a good chance that Egypt depends too much on the tourism for that. I don't know. It stinks. It stinks to me. It stinks to me the way Egypt handles their stuff. And that's, again, where we breed these conspiracy theories, right? For one, I simply just don't believe that the pyramids were built as burial chambers. Does that make me a conspiracy theorist? I don't know. I'm not convinced. But you see, here's the problem, right? Archaeologists who don't have any evidence that those were burial chambers. They don't have burial chambers. They didn't have an area that was once sealed that would have been the tomb with all the writings and paintings on the wall. Like, none of that's been found in the pyramids at Giza. And that's how we know their leaders were buried. So you're telling me that grave robbers got in, they grabbed all the stuff, they grabbed the body, they took the coffins with them, and they scrubbed down the burial chamber and hid all the signs of the wall they broke through to get in there? I don't know, man. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying the grave robber shit. Because grave robbers would go in, they'd steal the expensive stuff, and they're not going to sit there and intentionally perfectly destroy the walls and intentionally and perfectly rebuild the wherever it was that they sealed in. They're just not doing that. They're getting in, they're stealing the shit that has value, and they're getting out. And anything less than that is them being the conspiracy theorist. See, I'm not saying... I'm saying I'm not convinced they were burial chambers. I don't think the evidence exists to call them burial chambers. That's not being a conspiracy theorist. That's doing what they're doing. Oh, there's no evidence that ancient aliens were real. That's all I'm saying to them. There's no evidence that it was a burial chamber. But they insist that it was. And how are they any better than the people who are saying, wait, what if all this mythology is them speaking of gods? Or what if the gods they speak of were actually aliens? I see more evidence for that than I see evidence that there were pharaohs buried in the pyramids of Giza. But I'm the conspiracy theorist on this one. Isn't it funny how that works? You get your mainstream archaeology degree and you start making up stuff that doesn't make sense. And you have 100 years worth of people that went along with whatever you make up. All of a sudden, you get to have your own conspiracy theory. And you get to mock everybody else who even challenges that conspiracy theory, even though you don't have the evidence to support your position. And so that's, I think, another place that conspiracy theories are, because sometimes conspiracy theories are true. Sometimes we find out, like MK Ultra, the U.S. government has done horrible things to its citizens. It's fucking terrible. Look up the MK Ultra program. That was real. It was terrible. They were really trying to mind control people. They were really trying to figure out how to turn people into assassins against their will. Wild, wild ride. All kinds of LSD, And that's the other problem, right? Somebody's got to be out there thinking about what might actually be going on in these informational voids, in these places where we're being lied to with their conspiracy theories. See, that's another place that the conspiracy theory resides that is healthy and good and makes humanity better. So if you choose to engage in conspiracy theory, stay sane, be grounded, let the evidence reign supreme. And don't use it as a mechanism to say, or to push away the notion, or to avoid the fear that comes with not knowing. Because there's a lot of things I don't know. And I used to fall into a lot of traps and believe a lot of weird things before I was able to get past that. So let my lessons in that trap work in your favor. And with that, be well.